Okay, cool. So we're going to move on with the wrap up and the last talk for today, which, as I mentioned, I think will be a good lead-in for the ones that we will check out a bit later on at the Bitev Theater. Be sure to join us there. We have 3 really exciting keynotes. Plus, we are presenting the data from our latest report on the Serbian gaming industry for 2021. Also, be sure to later on join us at Club Dim in Cetinska Street. There's going to be also a live concert, lots of music, more food, and it's going to be open until 1 a.m., after which, most of our guests probably have free time until their morning pickups for the airport. So you use your time well, and I would like to welcome Attila, who is joining us from Switzerland, but is coming from Hungary. And he's coming from the company mmos, which is working on very interesting projects connecting science, research, and multiplayer games. That was more than enough for me to feature it in the program. So thanks for being here, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, thanks a lot for the kind introduction. Just a sec. Yeah. So I arrived to Belgrade yesterday, and I had the chance to travel together with some of my fellow presenters from the airport to downtown, and I heard a really interesting and funny story, and I thought to share it with you. So we were in the car, and we're talking about big surprise video games, and also for some reason mountains. And that's when Richard told us his story of that he didn't ski up until 3 years ago, and then he started to play with steep. And that experience gave him so much inspiration and enough guidance and input that he actually picked up snowboarding, and he's a happy snowboarder ever since. I think this is a great example and one of the many fascinating stories how video games can have a meaningful impact in our lives. And I believe that if we're, as the title of the conference suggests, if we're talking about building an exceptional game industry ecosystem, having the explicit goal of meaningful impact should be there that we're striving for. So games are big. Games industry is in a boost. We're engaging and entertaining almost 3 billion people. Games industry have lots of opportunities and great power. And my take is that great power primarily means great responsibility. And among many other things, great responsibility in the industry means that we have to continuously find new, innovative, and creative ways to contribute to the greater good. Now, our projects are just a little piece in this big, epic quest, but I really hope that it will give you some inspiration and some good examples, maybe. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Massively Multiplayer Online Science. This is a small Swiss company which we founded around a very specific idea. And the idea was to take crowdsourced scientific problems and integrate them with major AAA games as a seamless gaming experience. Now, citizen science or crowdsourced scientific activities and citizen science is nothing new. It's there ever since science is there. Outsiders and citizens' contribution to certain domains is substantial, collecting data, analyzing data, or even solving problems. And this just got a super boost with the advent of online technology, simply because it became so easy to distribute large amount of data and gather the results. As beautiful as citizen science is as an idea or as a phenomenon in science, there are some problems. And one of the major problems is terrible retention rates. So that's quite well researched, that there is this very strong foundation, which is the intrinsic motivation that we want to help progress science, so that's good news. But in reality, what we ask contributors to do is highly repetitive and quickly becomes boring for 99.9% of the people. And so they leave. And so most of these citizen science projects rely on a small but very enthusiastic and committed core user base. Now, our proposition was that why don't we engage the masters, or why don't we approach the masters of engagement, game developers and game designers, and ask them primarily two things. One is for them to help us with their often decades-long expertise of how to build more engaging experiences, and also to give access to their large player bases of millions or sometimes tens of millions. So this seemed to be a very strong concept, and I started to work on it even though I didn't have any contact in the game industry. And the first company that I contacted was CCP in Iceland, who are developing EVE Online. I guess many of you, or probably all of you know the game. And luckily, they were super receptive to the idea, so much so that I pitched this in 2015 November, and next year at GDC, which was sometimes in March, we already launched the first project, which became known as Project Discovery in EVE. This is super quick in AAA timeline, and bear in mind that this was really an exploratory project because nobody has ever done such a collaboration before. Not to mention that it was a huge leap of faith from CCP, because I know no other examples in the AAA industry where a game company presents content to players which is coming directly from a third party without any filtering or supervision. And that's what happened in EVE, that actually the images that we introduced in the first project that players analyzed were coming from our servers. But everything worked out fine. We introduced these beautiful images. These are microscopy images of human cells. And they're such a well fit to EVE that the art director of EVE didn't believe that we hadn't tampered with them to fit the EVE visual language. This is actually how they come out from the research pipeline. So we introduced 250,000 of these images in the game and created this small mini game where we asked players to mark the location, or actually classify the location or where they see the green staining on the image, which signifies the presence of a certain type of protein. And this became a big success. So in 1.5 years, during the project, we collected something like 32 million classification, which is enormous in citizen science. Now, one area of integration was, of course, the integration with the reward system. We very consciously made the decision that this is not going to be the most lucrative activity in EVE Online, so we didn't want to invite too much hacking or malicious submissions. But rather it was a way to say thank you to contributors. And this outfit was the Sisters of EVE combat suit, which was the ultimate reward for the first Project Discovery. And of course, game designers made a rough estimation of when the first would be handed out, and they were counting with something like 3 or 4 weeks. Now, when we launched the project, the first Sisters of EVE combat suit was handed out 17 hours after launch, and the second one a shy 6 minutes later. So that's when we already have a proof, a hard proof that this is going to be substantial. There's something crazy going on here. I wanted to show you this. This was the first publication, first major publication after we ran this project. Nature Biotechnology, for very understandable reasons, doesn't like to publish fake science. So this doesn't happen often, that they show non-existing spaceships on their front cover, but they consider this to be so important that they actually dedicated the front cover of Nature Biotechnology to these beautiful EVE Online spaceships. In 2017, we started a new project that was a perfect narrative fit to EVE, that was exoplanet research. Together with the University of Geneva, we introduced these light curves, light intensity graphs of stars, and we asked players to mark these dips, which might be transit events. Now, with all these projects, we tried to do something epic. So in this case, we were really happy and honored that Michel Mayer accepted to be part of the project. So he got an avatar in game. He was the one the players were interacting with. He also came to FanFest. Michel Mayer is the guy who discovered the first exoplanet and got the Nobel Prize for it 2 years ago. So the fact that he came to FanFest and gave a 1-hour talk in the big opera house of Reykjavik in the Harpa, telling why this is important, telling how he discovered the first exoplanet and why players' contributions are important. I think it's a very strong message how seriously science considers these collaborations. This image actually is from Ars Technica. I love this one. This is so this is the beautiful facade of Harpa, and in red you see Michel Mayor. Next to him, that's the Space Pope. So this guy always cosplays as the Amarian religious leader at FanFest. But in real life, he also is an education officer at the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So I really love this. This shows so much facets of this project and all the riches of it. We got worldwide media coverage. Articles praise these collaborations. So I mean, you must know that EVE is a crazy game, so there's always something to write about in EVE. But to get an article in the New Yorker, that's not obvious for EVE either. And we got in many major journals. And what was interesting to see that all these articles were positive. And of course, that was good for us, good for EVE, good for the player community. But I believe that was good for the whole gaming industry, that we could show that we are contributing to the greater good. In 2020, I got an email from Berger Finnbogason. He's the creative director of CCP. He asked me if there's anything that we can help with. That was around the first wave of COVID. And so we already had every piece of tech in place, every piece of the pipeline in place. So surprisingly quickly, we switched the project, like in 5 week time. This is coming from a technology called flow cytometry, and we asked players to draw these clusters in order to help researchers to better understand how the human immune system reacts to COVID. And here I have a BBC short to show you about the project.
Like you look at a plot and you just draw polygons around data. You can just sit there, pull it up and start doing it. And I think that was exciting to me, just how approachable it was. And then, I mean, secondly, and probably the more important part is just how relevant it is to me. Like, I can finally relate to this.
It's really just like citizen science to a T. We had a giant group of people, and we made this fun. We gamified this quite a bit. There's incentives for people to do it that'll boost their game experience, but it's also just the heart and soul of our community as well. These are things that our people really enjoy, and this really is for the greater good. And that was the strength of this project in particular, where this came out when everybody in the world was at its height of being affected of this.
We're doing two things. Is one, we can, once we have this infrastructure in place, we can help the scientists by accelerating the ability to look at things they know are there. The other thing we can do is something they can't do, and that's look at all the possible things that are in the blood. And so what we can do is we can take even people who are not scientists and show them these data sets, and they can detect patterns they've done a wonderful job in in the online game to explain the technology and explain the kinds of things we're looking for. And then we just let them loose on this data.
You know, you hear about the COVID research or COVID going on all around the world. A lot of people, like, you know, have had it or know someone who's had it. And just the fact that I can sit here at my desk while I'm waiting for a fleet, doing something that's going to contribute to, you know, helping find out information about COVID-19, that's just phenomenal that I have this opportunity just playing a video game. And I think that's really kind of what got me into it, is that I can sit at my desk in the comfort of my home and I can help researchers do something, you know, make a difference. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. And what was amazing with this project that, and thank you. So what was amazing with this project that we showcased that in cases where time is of the essence, players can not just contribute with enormous amount of data, but they can act very quickly, like rapid action force. So that was also interesting. We got some really nice recognitions. So this was last year. Actually, this year we're trying to get the Webbies for Borderlands Science. So if you go to that website, please vote. We also got an award, the Lavi Awards, which I didn't know before when they approached us. It's actually a Google-based award, and we got the special achievement award from the Lavis, and prior to us, it was handed out to the European Space Agency, to David Attenborough or Annie Lennox, and I think it again was a very important message that they decided to give it to a video game-based project. Now, in parallel with that, what we did with Eve, we started to talk with Gearbox. So I met with Randy Pitchford before we launched the first Project Discovery, actually at the same GDC. And I had no proof whatsoever. I was just there with shining eyes, trying to lay out our vision and plans. And he immediately got it. He saw the importance, and he said that he wants to have it in one of their games. And we had to wait a good 5 years to realize that dream, but it was well worth the wait because it eventually got into Borderlands 3, which was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, releases of 2019. And this became part of Borderlands in 2020 as a free update. This is Borderlands Science. Now, it was a milestone project. I mean, putting scientific minigame inside Eve, that was kind of a natural fit for several reasons. It's a science fiction game. The narrative is open to many different research initiatives. Players are already used to solving difficult puzzles. There is a lot of idle time in Eve, so it was easy to find place for this activity. Or a small thing like this, photorealistic, so it's easy to show microscopy images, you know, without any problems, artistic problems. Now that was not true with Borderlands. Borderlands, the mother of all looter shooters, is something where when you're running around with your shotgun, you need to have 150% of your attention. So for us, it was really interesting to see how Gearbox game designers will resolve this problem. So eventually they came up with this. They created a new arcade machine. Arcade machines existed in Borderlands before, and they created one on Sanctuary 3, which is the central hub at the Medic Bay. And if you go inside this arcade machine, there is this 8-bit retro-style minigame, which is something like Tetris/Candy Crush, only that if you're moving the little tiles, you're actually manipulating DNA data, and that DNA data comes from our gut. It's human microbiome related DNA data, and the problem is called DNA multiple sequence alignment. So basically, trying to see the common points of these small DNA fragments. And again, I wanted to show you the trailer for this.
Hey folks. This is Mayim Bialik, actor, PhD scientist, researcher, and your favorite person. Today, I'm here to talk to you about video games and science, and how we can grab both by their necks and make them kiss, consensually. Long story short, by playing Borderlands 3, you can contribute to real-world scientific research, as in data that helps real people in meat space. Speaking of meat, did you know that more than half the cells in our bodies are alien? Only 43% of our cells are of human origin. The rest belong to foreign microbes. These microbes have a massive impact on our body's health. The more we study microbes, the more we can learn about the accumulation of meat and existential terror that is the human body. These microbes are made up of DNA, just like us. Each microbe has its own special DNA signature, and similar species of microbes have similar DNA. If we could sequence all the different species of microbes found in the human body, which, remember, make up more than half of the cells in our body, we'd learn a ton about ourselves. To that end, the Microsetta Initiative collected tens of thousands of samples of, to use the scientific term, doo-doo. Extracted the DNA of the microbes inside and sequenced it. Now we just need to organize this data. Unfortunately, though computers excel at certain tasks like crunching numbers or tracking down specific pornography, they're not so good at organizing DNA information. See, different species of microbes have similar but not quite identical DNA. That means mapping their sequences can be kind of ambiguous. The computer makes lots of small mistakes that can corrupt downstream analysis. Which brings us back to video games. So we've got several million sequences that are each 150 nucleotides long that are riddled with small errors from the computer analysis. How can we get rid of all these errors? With your help. We've taken the millions of DNA sequences and broken them down into bite-sized puzzles that you can play and solve inside Borderlands 3. And try not to think about the fact that the DNA came from human excrement when I use phrases like bite-sized. By playing Borderlands Science inside Borderlands 3, you'll be directly helping our scientists organize and compare this dung data. The game is simple. You'll be confronted with different strands of DNA, each made up of individual tiles. It's your job to place as many of these tiles as possible in their appropriate row while matching the colors. It's not always possible to line everything up perfectly, but that's okay. By playing the game and matching the sequences, you'll also be identifying the errors in our computer analysis and helping scientists across the planet build a better algorithm for the future. And since all this research is open access, the entire scientific community will benefit from it. This research could directly lead to a universal catalog of all known microbes, which could lead to new breakthroughs in food, medicine, exercise. The sky's the limit. And it all starts with you playing a video game. But if the pursuit of knowledge isn't enough of an encouragement to sort through virtual butt microbes, then fear not. Playing Borderlands Science earns you in-game currency you can spend on booster items for your characters. Oh, and this is all totally free. Just activate the Borderlands Science machine on Sanctuary 3 and sort some gut microbes.
So I imagine you understand that creating such a cool trailer for a citizen science project, which is narrated by Mayim Bialik, is totally out of reach for traditional research teams. So that was quite amazing to see already. But the real pleasant surprise was that, well, game designers don't want to break immersion for very good reasons. And for example, in Project Discovery, we couldn't tell that those images were coming from Sweden because that would contradict the lore. But here, game designers decided that it's too important not to show it to players. So basically, when you're first interacting with the arcade machine, this is the video that you're seeing. And I think that way, the educative value of the project really increased. So that was quite beautiful. Another important thing with this project was that this actually existed before. So this is the Citizen Science Project Philo, which was created by McGill University. And you see that the game is more or less the same. What happened is that Gearbox game designers took the original project together with the researchers. They started to work on it. They changed the appearance of the game, and they made some minor modifications to make it more playable and playful. And which actually proved to be very interesting from a scientific point of view as well. And then they introduced it in the game in this format. Now, for you to understand how substantial player contribution is, the day we launched this inside Borderlands 3, we collected 5 times more data than during the 10 years that researchers were running the original project. That's how powerful player contribution is in these projects. So I wanted to finish with this one. This was made as a visual for project discovery for the players. So citizen science begins with the player community, which is very true. But I like to use it on these industry talks because I believe that citizen science begins with you guys. You're the game developers, you're the game designers, you are the investors who are funding these projects. So really, you are the enablers who can make this happen. What I can promise is this, besides being super important, it's lots of fun. It's super inspiring for the player community as well as for the developers who are participating in the project. So if you're inspired, don't hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you, Attila. I think it was a great way to round it up for today, and I'm sure there are questions. So, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Relja. Per Strömbäck from the Swedish Association. Really cool, thanks a lot. My question is, what is the potential? I mean, what's the potential? How much research data is there out there waiting to be analyzed and organized through gamer science, or what you want to call it? And what is the limit, the bottleneck? I mean, how many gamers are there? Are these proportionate and it's just about matchmaking them? Or is there infinite amounts of data waiting to be analyzed and too few gamers? Or what's the story? Thanks.
Well, at this point, I would say that there is way more data to analyze than games who have the opportunity to make this happen. What I've seen, and as you were saying, my primary role in this story is to make this matchmaking process. And what I've seen in the last 5-6 years is that it's not the case that game designers and game developers don't believe that this is important or this is cool or that they don't want to do it, but it's a substantial commitment from their side. And even with EVE Online, it was not obvious to pull it off. We had to justify, not just for the management of EVE that this makes sense and that we allocate substantial resources to develop this feature, but also to the gamer community, who have an endless wish list of what they want to see implemented in the game and changed in the game, and why we allocate resources in something which is nowhere on their wish list. So the harsh reality is that game developers, unfortunately, often don't have the means to make this happen. So we're actively thinking how to resolve this issue. One of the solutions that we're developing now, which is soon to be in a prototype phase, is a sort of a looser integration, where we try to keep this motivation that you're integrating still with your favorite game and favorite virtual world, but it's outside of the game. So the burden that falls on the developers are lighter.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was awesome. One question I had was, how big does a game need to be for it to be relevant, and can smaller games be relevant on some topics in general, or do you exclusively work with really big names and really big communities?
So we don't know actually where is the lower limit. We know that it worked perfectly with EVE. What you have to see is that this is a big investment from both the game developer, but also from the researcher side. So they're very involved in the process, not just in preparing the data, but then participating in with the interaction with the community. So this is a lot of energy and effort and time. So it doesn't make sense to do it below a certain threshold. again, maybe in the future we'll have solution where we have much more sort of standardized mini games that can be integrated with several games without active involvement. But right now, setting up such a project requires a lot of fine-tuning and tailoring and so a lot of work from all sides, including us. We are the ones who are providing sort of a middleware, an API that standardizes the data from science and then gives an API to developers. So that takes some like custom development as well when a new project arrives. Having said that, there are certain research projects which are actually much more niche. So for example, I talked to a researcher in Bretagne. She has a ton of video footage of deep sea hydrothermal vents. And this is a footage which, you know, like animals and plants and things are moving around, not really. And you have to count them and segment the image. But it's a kind of video footage that, of course, would never make it to Eve. But maybe in a smaller game, which is around ocean discovery, this would make a perfect fit. And then even with a smaller gamer community, it would make sense because no way it will ever get into a AAA title. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say there's a company in Serbia that actually worked on a deep sea game, so who knows? Maybe I introduce you to the guy. Yeah. Okay, so do we have any more questions? Okay, I think we are ready to round it up. Thanks once more, and see you guys in 1.5 hours, a bit downhill at the very amazing bit of theater. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.